remember your first pet? Of course. For me, I have to go all the way back, I hate to admit this, 1975. At the age of 6 years old, that's actually a picture of me, my mom and my sister. And I can remember that spring, I went to the carnival. And there was a game you played where you threw these ping pong balls. And sure enough, I was a winner. I came home that day with my very first pet, of course, a goldfish. Now, I only thought that goldfish ever got so big. And by the way, my goldfish didn't live to see 1 year, unfortunately. They're not supposed to have the brown spots when you bring them home. He unfortunately passed away, but it turns out that most goldfish only grow to be about 3 inches in length. But does anyone here want to fathom what the world's largest goldfish is? What do you think? 24 inches? Close. Nearly 20 inches. Now think about that. We're roughly 5 or 6 feet tall. If we walked outside this building right now, that would be like bumping into somebody who's 3 stories tall. How can that be possible that the monster cousins of the average goldfish are 5 to 6 times bigger? Well, it turns out the growth of a goldfish is impacted by 5 things. And those very same 5 things are the things that influence the growth of everyone's business. So let's look at the growth of a goldfish and compare it to the growth of business. So we've all heard this, right? The size of the bowl for that goldfish will determine how big it can get. So the bigger the bowl that goldfish is in, or the bigger the pond, the more it will be able to grow. So if you're in business, what's the size of the bowl or the pond? The market, right? Exactly. It's the market. The bigger the market that you're in, the more that you can grow. Here's the second one, and this one's a no-brainer. Their growth is impacted by the amount of other goldfish that are in that bowl or pond. So in business, who are the other goldfish? Your competitors, your competition. Here's the third thing, and this is very applicable to where we are right now. The quality of the water that goldfish is in. So think about the nutrients that are in the water. The cloudiness of the water that surrounds the goldfish will impact its growth. The more nutrients, the less cloudy, the more that goldfish will grow. So if you're in business, what would you equate that outside environment to be in business? You said the economy, Peter? Absolutely, the economy. And so it could be those nutrients, could be the capital you need to grow your business. That cloudiness, like the time we're in right now, could be things like consumer confidence, people's willingness to purchase. Here's the fourth thing. How that goldfish does in its first 4 months of life will determine how big it can get. So how it does out of the gate, big factor. In fact, the baby goldfish, when it's so small, a baby goldfish is called a fry, as in small fry. So if you're in business, what would you call the first 4 months of your life? Disaster. Disaster. The launch, right? If you're a startup. Or it could be if you have a new product or service, how that does in that critical 4 months will determine ultimately how big you get. So we've talked about size of the bowl. We've talked about the amount of other goldfish. We've talked about the quality of the water. And now the first 120 days. Here's the fifth thing. The genetic makeup of that goldfish. So what that goldfish is born with that separates it from all of the other goldfish around it, and the better genes it has, and the more it's separated, the bigger it'll grow. So if you're in business, what's genetic makeup? Your team, it could be your team, but I'm thinking more of your product or service that you have. Differentiation, Diane. Absolutely. how do you stand out? How does your product or service stand out from your competition? Now, I'm going to assume everyone here in this room has been in business for 4 months. Is that true? Anyone a true startup less than 4 months? Okay. So of these 5 things, what do you actually have control over? Does anyone here have control over the market? No. How about your competition? Anyone have control over the economy? See me afterwards, it'd be great. This 5th one, genetic makeup, is the only thing you have control over. And we're going to talk about the idea today of standing out. And I would say that the way you stand out going forward and differentiate yourself is around the experience that you provide for the customers that you serve every day. How do you stand out in what we call a sea of sameness? Now, I'm not the only one who thinks that customer experience is going to be that vital competitive differentiator. This is research from Gartner. Gartner said this year that 89% of companies expect that customer experience will be the number one thing that they compete on. Now, to put that as a frame of reference, you only have to go back 5 years ago, and that number was just 36%. It's no longer your price, it's no longer your location, it's no longer even the service that you provide, it's the overall customer experience that's key. Now, why is it important? It directly impacts the bottom line. In fact, this is another stat by Gartner. Gartner said if you could reduce your churn by just 5 percentage points, so if you retain 3 out of every 4 customers, 75%, if you could take that up just 5 percentage points to 80%, your bottom line profit increases between 25% all the way up to 125%. Why is that? Why is it if you have your customers that decide to stick around and stay with you? What do you think the benefits? They're your best sales force. They tend to they refer their friends and their colleagues. And that's why experience is so key, because if you can get somebody to actually make that referral, the difference between a normal customer that comes to you via traditional means and someone who comes to you because they've been referred to you in the business is drastically different. That referred customer is upwards of 4 times as valuable to you. Why 4 times? Typically, they will spend up to twice the amount of money over their lifetime. And because they've been referred themselves, what are they more apt to do? To tell other people. They'll refer over their lifetime up to twice the amount of people. 4 times as valuable. So we're going to talk about this idea of thinking outside the bowl. Of course, I want you to be thinking about how do you apply these Goldfish principles to your company. But everyone here in this room is a leader, and my hope is that you're also going to take a hard look in the mirror and think about how do I apply these principles to myself. You know, I believe that this idea of customer experience is going to be the ultimate differentiator, but here's a little bit of a confession. My first 2 decades in marketing, I was not about the experience at all. All I did was try to chase impressions, eyeballs and earlobes. And I did things that were massive. But what I've learned is your brand nowadays is no longer what you tell people it is. It's not. It's what your customer experiences, it's what they feel about that experience, and most importantly, it's what they tell to other people. So about 9 years ago, after being this big time marketer and chasing eyeballs and earlobes, I had what I call my moment of truth. And here I was at a nice rooftop bar when I used to live just outside New York City, enjoying as you only can in New York a $14 beer, if that's at all possible to do. And I'm with a work colleague. We're about to go to a networking event. And I see this older gentleman sitting across from me. And he's been on his own for over a half an hour, and every once in a while I can see him scan the room. It's obvious to me that this guy's waiting for someone. So I start to feel bad for him, so I just strike up conversation. And I lean in and I go, excuse me, I go, do you know we spend 10% of our life waiting? Would you guys agree with that? More? No, it's 10%, and I know that's true because I once read that online. So, true story. It has to be true. True hashtag. And he looked at me and he laughed. He says, you know what? He says, I am waiting for somebody. And I leaned and I said, well, obviously they're not on time. And he looked at me strangely. I'll never forget this. Gave me the strangest look, and he said, on time? He said, no one is ever on time. What do you mean? I go, I've been on time before. Not often, but... And he raised it. I'll never forget this older gentleman raised his finger to me and he went like this. He said, no. He says, no one is ever on time. He said, people in life are either early or they're late. He said, on time is a myth. And it was right then that something snapped for me. I said to myself, that same reasoning applies to the customers that we serve every day. Does anyone here in this room just meet the expectations of a customer? You're saying yes. Absolutely no, Chris. Why? Do you ever just meet their expectations? Maybe, right? No, I would argue, and we can argue back and forth, I would argue that you either exceed their expectations or you fall short of them. That no one ever just gets right to expectations. There's no such thing as meeting customer expectations. And so that night I went home and I said to myself, there's got to be companies out there that are focusing on the customer and finding little ways that they can step it up. And right about that time, I came across these four guys. When all of the other airlines decided to charge for checked baggage, what did Southwest do? Bags fly free. In one move, they went from being a brand who competed on the price that they charged to now a brand that competed on the value that they gave to their customers. How much does it cost if you need to change your flight on Southwest? $0. How about if you have to cancel your flight on Southwest? $0. I came across this guy. This is Tony Hsieh, founder of Zappos. Built a $1 billion a year company in less than 10 years. And he did it without spending hardly any money on traditional advertising. He did it by investing back into the customers he had. In fact, if you're a returning customer to Zappos, many times you get your 2-day shipping upgraded to overnight. Does that happen for anyone here? Okay. Bunch right here, yeah. But I went past these two and I said, there's got to be other companies. I started this thing called the Purple Goldfish Project. I sat out to get 1,001 examples of companies that did the little extra. Now, I call these things a purple goldfish real quick. Why purple? Purple is an ode to this iconic American city. New Orleans. And its most famous event, which is Mardi Gras. So purple is one of 3 colors, purple, green, and gold. And the reason why it's an ode to Mardi Gras and New Orleans is that there's one word that comes from New Orleans that exemplifies this idea of trying to do a little bit more to go beyond the transaction. And it's a word that Mark Twain once said was worth traveling all the way to New Orleans to get. And that one word is called lagniappe. Creole word, French and Spanish, it literally means the gift or to give more. All right, so that's why purple. Now, why a goldfish? Goldfish was inspired by this hotel chain, Kimpton. Has anyone here stayed at a Kimpton before? Okay. Jim? Do they get the idea of the customer experience? Absolutely, right? If you stay at a Kimpton, there's always gourmet coffee for free in the lobby. In the afternoon, they do wine tasting. There's fresh fruit. If you've got a pet, they're pet friendly. They'll treat your dog like a king. No extra charge. But here's my favorite. If you're staying at a Kimpton property, maybe you're there on business, a couple days, you're getting a little lonely, these guys will give you a pet goldfish for your stay. It's a program that they call G.L.U.E. And so I mentioned I set out to get 1,001 examples. Has anyone here collected 1,001 of anything? Beer? Okay. Let me give you advice if you ever consider. Yes, Meredith, what? Shoes! 500 pair or 1,000? Okay. You're working your way there, right? We have to have goals in life. I should have taken advice. I tell people, someone once gave me about cross-country skiing when I came up with 1,001. And here's the advice. If you ever think about going cross-country skiing, greatest piece of advice I've ever gotten, start with a small country. Yeah. I should have done 501. I started collecting them back in 2009. I hit 1,001 in 2012. It took nearly 27 months to collect all the examples. But what I found as I collected them, I started to see patterns of how you could do that little extra. And it turns out there's 12 different ways that you can create a purple goldfish. And so half of them are what we call value. That's the little something extra that you do. But probably even more importantly are the bits that are maintenance related. How do you make it easier for your customer to do business with you by doing that little extra? So Lagniappe is hard to spell. It's even harder to say. So I've come up with my own acronym. I call it G.L.U.E. And the G in G.L.U.E. is to give. And it's the idea of giving that little something extra. You now know what a purple goldfish is. If I say this, if I say Doubletree Hotel, what do you say? Cookie. What? A regular cookie? A warm chocolate chip cookie, right? Individually wrapped, good size, packed with chocolate chips. Last year they gave away their 300 millionth chocolate chip cookie. These cookies are so good. My friend Jeff Hazlett, former CMO of Kodak, he says they're so good he dreams about them when he stays at other hotels. They're that good. So G for G, I love that's a signature thing. L is for little, meaning it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be a little something extra. I collected over 1,000 examples. This may be my favorite. This is from St. Paul, Minnesota, Izzy's Ice Cream. When you buy a scoop of ice cream at Izzy's, they give you a little mini scoop on top for free. That little mini scoop is called the Izzy. You order 2 scoops, you get 2 Izzy's. G for give, L for little. The U is for unexpected. And if you can do something that's unexpected, you create an emotional response. And how our brain works is when we get an emotional response, our brain floods our body with a thing called dopamine. And dopamine is literally the post-it note for our memory. Safelite Auto Glass, they will come to your home or office to repair or replace your windshield. Now when they come out and they do a repair, they put this funky thing onto your windshield. And they literally, I still don't know how they do this, but they drill a hole right into the crack in your windshield. And then they put an epoxy resin that goes into that crack to seal it. And it takes 10 minutes for the epoxy resin to cure. So the technician will walk back to their van, and they will get glass cleaner, and they will get a vacuum. And for the remainder of that time, they do the entire interior of your car. So not only when you walk out does your windshield miraculously look like it's new, but your car looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor. Has that ever happened for anyone here with Safelite? It has. Peter? Okay, Diane. Totally unexpected. Did you tell anyone about the experience? Absolutely. Last one is extra. Give little unexpected extras. This is a Canadian company. It's called Nurse Next Door. They provide home health care workers into people's homes. Every once in a while, they'll screw up. When they make a mistake, could be a scheduling thing, could be an issue with the patient. They not only send a handwritten note, but they send a freshly baked apple pie to apologize. And it's just not the right thing to do. It's good business. Every year they spend about $2,000 on pies. They know it saves them over $100,000 in potential lost business. Give little unexpected extras.